Hi folks, Aaron and Kyle here with Locators. We're going to be talking about sturgeon setups, sturgeon rigs, and sturgeon fishing rods.
Baits, lines, basically a couple very simple tactics for fishing the rivers, especially here in Alberta or anywhere in Western Canada.
So let's start off with saying myself, I haven't caught a sturgeon.
Yeah, we'll get there one day.
We will.
Get there one day.
And using these products here is what's going to make it happen. And I really like your setup, and I really wanted you. We've had a couple of questions on sturgeon fishing setups, pickerel rigs, sturgeon rigs.
Just fishing the river, the North Saskatchewan River in particular. We've had a couple friends of ours say, hey, I've been using your common pickerel rig, and I just keep getting fish on, and then you're reeling them in and they're gone.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to start this off here. So pickerel rigs, there's mixed emotions about these things. They're a love-hate thing. If you lose this in the river, it's really bad. It can kill fish. It can get tangled in birds and stuff like that. Now, I'm not saying they don't catch fish. They absolutely do. One big trick when it comes to using pickerel rigs, if you decide to, is your hook. Your hook is very important. So when you buy these plain Jane ones from Cabela's or Canadian Tire, they're just going to come with this long shaft, straight hook, and it's just plain Jane. You go and to our friend Lexi's Lures. She makes these hand-tied, and they actually come with octopus hooks on them.
Yeah.
So if you see here, the hook kind of curls back into itself there.
Into the shaft, yeah.
Back into the shaft. It's almost like having a second barb. I call them cheater hooks. They really work well. That's the best way to make a sturgeon rig a little bit more effective. Okay?
For sure. So let's get started on your setup. What kind of rod do you have here, Kyle?
Okay, so this I recently purchased from our good buddy Jay there at Hooked Up Fishing Gear. It's a Daiwa is the brand name. It's an 8.6 heavy, and it has the 4500 series reel on it. The rod and reel combo together, I think, was only around $90 Canadian. It was a smoking deal.
Yeah.
If you want to get into sturgeon fishing and you plan on getting after some really big sturgeon, you're gonna want a bigger rod. Something like this is gonna do every fish in Alberta possible. So,
Under the $100 mark.
Under the $100 mark, and that's you're laughing there. Like, I never thought I would get a rod of this caliber for such a good price.
Yeah, I looked at it and I thought big bucks, but at the same sense that under $100, you're looking at the rod and reel combo. So what are you going to use for line? So when you're headed out, you're going fishing, what did you...
So the line that I had Jay string up on here for me is a 30-pound braid.
Okay.
Now, I built this rod, line, and rig and everything with sturgeon in mind.
Yeah.
So in my opinion, the 30 is great. It's fine. It kind of gives it a weak point when your rig starts.
Yeah. I like the fact that they have huge eyes, or what do we call it?
Yeah, eyelets, yeah.
Eyelets, yeah. So we got huge eyes throughout the whole rod all the way to the very end.
Yeah.
How's your action on the end?
You know what? I haven't used this rod yet.
Okay. All right.
I have yet to use this particular rod.
Yeah, perfect.
I've played around with it a little bit, and it is super stiff.
Yeah.
Like, I'd say the first 2 feet of this rod is where you get your bend.
We're going to be relying
The rest of it is just solid.
Yeah, you'd be relying on bells pretty much when we're out fishing anyways. We're going to be hearing some bells, and that's where those octopus hooks are going to come into play. There's no room for error here. You're going to be connecting with the fish. You've caught a few.
The only way you're gonna miss a bite with these hooks is if your bait's hanging off the end. And if you're using large baits, well, you should be using a stinger hook, or trailer hook, whatever you want to call them. But the octopus hook, you're almost guaranteed a fish to stay on.
Yeah.
way more than these straight hooks that come on your plain Jane pickerel rig.
If you're hearing those bells, you're either got a fish on or what's happening.
So since I've been using this Sturgeon rig, which we're about to get into,
Yeah.
it has the 8/0 octopus hook on there. If my bell goes off and it doesn't continue to go off, it's because something floating downstream has bumped my line.
Yeah, consider those.
I don't have just a missed hit. It's either you got a fish on or something bumped into your line floating down the current.
So we got into your line, which is what pound test?
Yeah, that's just 30 braid.
30
That's simple,
braid.
yeah.
So then you have a swivel connection
Okay.
tied to that.
So after we go here, this is my personal rig. This
Yeah.
is the way I like to do it. I've had this exact same setup on other rods, but the rods were complete under caliber. They weren't up to what I wanted to put on the end of it. So I have no problem admitting that I am horrible at tying blood knots.
Sure.
I can do it, but I've had them fail so many times on me that I don't trust them. So I just simply use swivels.
Okay.
You just knot it up, whatever knot you want to use.
Yeah,
That's
your
your preference, and then just where you want line to line, you use a swivel.
So
Simple.
this is now a sturgeon leader.
Right. So you go from your base line, which I was using the 30-pound braid. Then I go to this sturgeon leader, which was highly recommended.
Yeah.
It's actually 80-pound,
Okay.
an 80-pound braid. I think it's braid. I don't know. It's definitely braided inside, but it's almost got like a sheath on the outside. It's different, right?
Yeah.
It's sturgeon leader. So you want to catch sturgeon, there it is, right?
80-pound mono?
Okay, so there. So it has the outer sheath of braid, and the inside would be monofilament. Then.
Oh, perfect.
That's exactly how it would work.
So getting to that. So then from there,
Yeah. So
you give it
there's
about how many lengths?
There's about 5 feet of sturgeon leader, 5 or 6 feet of sturgeon leader. And then we go into the sturgeon rig itself with
Yeah.
another swivel there, of course, because I can't tie blood knots.
So I'm going to hold this up for you guys, and hopefully you can understand what Kyle's talking about when he gets into this. So what are we using here? What is
The
this?
difference between this sturgeon rig and a normal pickerel rig is you put your weight at the bottom of the pickerel rig, whereas on a sturgeon rig, you have this slider clip, slides up and down your line, and that's where you put your weight. So technically, what you're doing now is not what it's going to do.
Right. This is going to lay on the
Your
ground.
weight is going to stay stationary, and your line is going to go up and down through it, and it gives it movement within the current.
Yeah.
So you're not just fishing one stationary spot. Bait's always going to move. Natural bait's going to move around. It's not just going to stay there typically. Okay?
Right. So you got a swivel here and a swivel here.
Yep.
Does this come all connected? Like, where did you get this from?
So
this whole setup
this
here.
sturgeon rig in particular, I got through our good buddy Scuba Steve. He sold these pre-tied sturgeon rigs. I think they're like $7 or $8, something like that.
Yeah.
And they're great. It's like 50-pound fluorocarbon on there.
There we go.
They're 110-pound swivels.
So what's the point of the beads? Let's talk about the beads. Why are they in place?
The point of the beads on either side of your slip weight here is if you didn't have them, the slip weight would smash into your knots and break your knots. So you put these beads on to save your knots.
Yeah. So that's all pre-done.
Yep, that's all exactly how you see it. That's how it's bought.
So that will save your knot for sure. That's awesome. So depending on how fast the current is, Kyle, are you going to be switching out weights? Are you going to use different weights? Are you going to use flat weights? Are you going to use rectangle weights? There's so many weights to choose from.
There is multiple options, and I'm not going to say any of them are wrong. Okay? Right. From my fishing experience, especially in the North Saskatchewan River and the Pembina,
Yeah.
I really like these triangle weights.
Okay.
Again, it's one of those things where people hate them, but I have had really good luck with them.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you the main reason people don't like them is because typically they'll land down current like this, and when you go to pull it back in, the flat side of it gets stuck against rocks and everything.
Okay.
Now I find the opposite thing, because if you give it a quick snap right off the bat,
Yep. You've told me that a couple of times.
Pyramid
Taking
stands
advice.
up and pulls right out.
Yeah, you
and
betcha.
there's no problem with it.
Yeah, so you're not going to lose this as you would lose one of these.
Yeah, and that's the other really good benefit with the Sturgeon Rig. Now, like we were saying, with this, your weight's on the bottom. Now these are always made out of just, maybe 20 or 30 pound mono or fluoro, sorry.
Okay.
And when you break them, you're usually breaking the line itself or your line that you have spooled.
Right.
And you leave this whole rig in the water body, and it has big metal things that take forever to rust, but the line most in particular and the hooks.
You don't want these in our waterways.
If you have a fish snap this off,
Yeah.
he spins up, well now he's gonna have the other hook wrapped in him somewhere.
Exactly.
Always on the body. It's never that they get both hooks in the mouth at the same time.
And the
that
problem,
just doesn't happen.
And the problem is with this, and when we got the question, it was something to definitely talk about. The hooks have lost so many fish for me. Like these style of hooks, I've hook set and nothing. Hook set, nothing. Watching Kyle using these ones, 10-pound pike last year on the North Saskatchewan River, using that setup, brought it in like nothing. There was no question that you're gonna lose that fish.
Well, and there was no need. There almost wasn't a need for the hook set.
Exactly.
You just grab the rod and start reeling.
Yeah, it's gonna be pulling. Your bill's gonna go. Yeah. You've already let the equipment do the work for you. So let's get into bait and let's talk about what are you gonna be using for bait when you're going to be throwing out. You want to get to that deep hole, whatever.
Bait is always dependent on what species you're after.
Sure.
Right? Everyone knows that.
Yeah.
Now, the old go-to, never fails you, is worms.
Yeah, worms, 100%.
Always worms. Whether you dig your own, you buy them at the store, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter what kind, what color.
When I'm
Worms.
targeting sturgeon in particular,
Yeah.
I like to go, I don't know how old those are.
Yeah, they're
They look pretty old.
Time for some new ones. Time for some new ones. They've been in the fridge. That's another point of.
When I go for sturgeon in particular, I like to use these bigger ones. They're night crawlers opposed to trout worms.
How would you wrap them up on here, on this hook?
Honestly, I just make it look like a big ball.
Perfect. Yeah.
Because if you leave the worm tailing off,
Yeah,
sometimes they
bite
can
it
just
off.
bite the tail.
Yep.
Sturgeon won't typically do that. They're a vacuum. So when they eat something, they just
Bottom
suck
feeder.
it right up, right?
Yeah.
The whole thing.
And they don't have a chance. Of
Now,
getting
if you're kind of in the mindset of I don't care if it's just sturgeon, maybe I'll catch a pike, maybe a walleye. Those are species that are known to come and bite the tail off your stuff.
For sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So no, my thing I like to do for baiting worms on this octopus hook on the Sturgeon Rig is just poke it through and poke it through and poke it through and just keep zigzagging it on and get as much worm on that one hook as you possibly can.
Almost like a ball.
A big bait ball. That's
Yeah.
exactly what it is, right?
Sure, and I mean, there's tons of different ways of doing that stuff, and it's personal. It's your own preference.
Yeah.
Whichever way you want to put your worm on is totally up to you. That's just the way Kyle does it. But there are other options too. Another being leeches.
Yeah, lots of guys use leeches. I've never personally had much luck with leeches. I really hate that they don't stay on your hook very well.
Yeah.
And I think everyone else can relate to that. Jay there, again, at Hooked Up Fishing Gear.
Yeah.
He started making these plastic leeches. And yeah, careful, if you're going to give those a whiff, they are potent. He's got these ones garlic scented.
Yeah.
We were out a week or two ago here at a lake just fishing for some pike, and these things were one of the ticket items. I don't know if it's garlic, if it's a leech pattern, what it is, but they were working super well.
Color on them too, like
The color, it's got a really good sparkle.
Yeah.
So my theory is leeches are a very common bait for fishing rivers,
For sure.
around our area here anyway. So
Personal
I'm
preference,
getting
yeah.
really keen to try those on the Sturgeon Rig. It's potent, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be on your hands for weeks.
That's some good garlic. It'll smell up my fingers for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, that's that's pretty much all of it in a nutshell, I think.
Yeah, and the Lexi lures, they got the octopus hooks again. They're just a smaller version of what you have going on to here. They're just so what number do you think that would be?
That's an 8/0.
8/0?
Yeah.
I don't know, and I can't say what size that is, but it's pretty much the same setup. It just comes with a little bit of extra. You know, it's got a different hook, a different style of hook.
It's a sturgeon rig done right, okay?
What did you say that you added on here?
Just gonna say that.
Yeah.
So my favorite part about Lexi lures is rather than tying knots and, you know, the knot being the strongest part, ideally, she's gone and done this. So I don't know how well this is gonna show up here, but they use these clips opposed to tying knots. And these clips will actually break right there or come undone, and it releases the bad parts of the rig and doesn't leave the bad parts of the rig in your water body. You can retrieve it out.
Excellent.
That's they're great. And another thing, Lexi Lures also does do the sturgeon rigs as well. Like I was saying,
The swivel ones?
I got this pre-tied one from Scuba Steve, but Lexi Lures does do pre-tied slip weight sturgeon rigs.
I'll have to order some of those.
Yeah.
Another opportunity is for you to go like hooked up fishing gear. Fantastic place. I went and talked to Jay about this probably last Thursday. And I said, what would I need to buy off the shelf to build one of these? And it is all there. The beads are there. He can tell you what to use for mono, right? No. Fluorocarbon.
There's no stretch
mono.
in that.
Yeah, exactly. He can get everything off the shelf and show you exactly what you need to buy. Down to the weights, lead, all different kinds. So that's another option if you want to build your own rigs, your own sturgeon setups. But that's basically all of it in a nutshell.
Yep.
And that works fantastic. It's incredible. It's better on the fish. It is, as opposed to something like that. Like, yeah, you can buy how much of these for how much.
Yeah, I think the last batch of these cheap ones that I bought was at Cabela's, and I think I got a dozen of them for $20.
Yeah, and personally, I don't have any more because I've lost them to the waterway.
Yeah,
and I don't feel great about it.
That's the unfortunate thing about pickle rigs is a lot of times you lose them in the water.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm just honestly going to do away with these from now on. They're done with me and my fishing weapon arsenal. They're finished with me. I'm going to strictly stick to this and set this up right.
There's a time and a place for sturgeon rigs.
Yeah.
You can get away with using them in lakes. You can jig for perch with them. I would much rather see someone jig for perch with a pickle rig than use a pickle rig in the river.
Yeah. With the
because you're not going to break it off fishing for perch like you're going to break it off getting stuck in rocks in the North Saskatchewan River, right? So
yeah, there's also plastic worms he's been doing as well. So we can just not have to, skip the bait process. During the summer, I really don't honestly use any bait, any live bait. I actually do when I'm river fishing. Like I will.
Yeah, for sure.
I will bring worms with me, but I've been really honing in on plastics this year and last year. I've been finding them to work. So
yeah, I'll be honest. I was never a plastics guy. I bought lots of different kinds in the past. Where it didn't matter what you're fishing for, whether it's trout or the tooth critters and what the river, didn't matter.
Yeah,
I was never a plastics guy. None of it ever seemed to work for me. And then when I started getting these things from Jay, and he gave me a little bit of knowledge, a little bit more knowledge every time I went in there.
Tips and tricks.
This is where you would use this kind of plastic. This is where you'd use this kind of plastic. But at the end of the day, I'm convinced it doesn't matter anymore because they're all scented with garlic or fish or bacon.
You're
as
using
soon as they
bait.
smell that, they're gonna eat it.
You're using bait. You're baiting them.
It's still a bait. It's absolutely
and
still
also,
a bait.
let's not forget, you can't take some of these into certain bodies of water, right? Read your regulations.
Yeah.
There's certain lakes that you can't use baited or scented or anything like that. So definitely think about that when you put them into your fishing packs, to keep them separate away from things that you can use when it comes to fishing those certain types of bodies of water.
Any of these soft plastics that he makes,
Yeah.
he does them scented or unscented,
Yeah.
doesn't matter. So
Exactly. So you can just keep them separate though. You don't want your garlic scented ones in with your non-scented, right?
yeah, that's good. That's a good tip.
Yeah, for
Good
sure.
tip, yeah.
So separate your baits, but thanks, Kyle. This is a great setup you
yeah.
got here, and I think I'm going to be jumping right into this. My season's probably going to start next year for sturgeon. I'm after the fall eyes now. We're getting into September, the very beginning.
Right.
So
sturgeon, the second wind of sturgeon is coming up for the
absolutely.
season, so.
And if you want to continue on with those rivers and stuff like that, I know you're excited, and I know you just got this rig, but you got a great setup here, and you're knowledgeable when it comes to this kind of stuff. So we definitely got to talk about this. There's questions and stuff like that, but this is a great setup. It's easy, but nobody's really dumbed it down for me. Like when I walk into the store, I'm timid to go and talk to the owner of the store, or guys like Jay is fine to talk to him. He's great, but I got a lot of my information from you. And this is where I really hone in and say, okay, this is exactly how it is. And a couple of garage beers and an explanation. Let's talk to people and bring that to their attention on how easy something like this is to put together. So
you bet.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much, Kyle.
Right on.
Right on. You're going to just make people better. And let's keep on.
Yeah.
And you know what, guys? Thanks for tuning in. And we'll see you guys
on the lake.